There's a lot of horrible tenants out there. There's a lot of horrible landlords out there. And so the LLC is your first step of protection, because what it does is you then have a shield where you don't own the property, the LLC does.
Greetings, well builders. Welcome to Get Diversified, your go-to podcast for all things real estate investments.
I'm Jacqueline.
Melvin Landry. We're thrilled to embark on this wealth-building journey with you.
Imagine this. What if your investments not only secure your future, but also unlock a life of financial freedom? That's what we're diving into on this show. Apartment buildings, storage facilities, mobile home parks, the whole shebang.
But here's the kicker. It's not just about investing. It's about crafting a legacy, building memories with your loved ones, and seizing every moment. Time is the currency of life. And let's be real, none of us wants to waste.
We've got the insights, experience, and dash of excitement to spice up your investing game. Plus, we'll throw in some real-life stories that'll make you see the potential in every brick and mortar.
Subscribe, buckle up, and get ready to turn your investments into the ticket to financial freedom. Together, we're not just building wealth, we're building the community of savvy investors. Let's get diversified.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Get Diversified. Welcome again to all of our returning listeners and to those that are new. Today, I am joined by Rita Young. She goes by Rita, and I'm going to try to do a good introduction for her. So, Rita Young, a licensed Pennsylvania attorney, accomplished legal research professional, and an emerging real estate investor. Rita has spent more than 3 decades working at the intersection of law, research, and information. Her impressive educational background includes a degree in law, public and international affairs, and library and information science. Throughout her career, she has served in senior legal research roles at major law firms, taught legal research, and shared her knowledge with other professionals through national industry presentations. More recently, Rita decided to take her analytical skills beyond statutes, case law, and legal research and apply them to the world of real estate investing. As she puts it, the experience has already been a wild trip, and we're actually going to talk about that. Today, we will learn what inspired her to begin investing and the lessons she encountered along the way, and how her legal and research background influences the way she evaluates opportunities and approaches risks. So, Rita, what did I miss on that? And welcome to the show.
Wow, that makes me sound really impressive. I don't think you missed a single thing. Thank you for that introduction, Jackie, and thank you for the invitation to be here. Hello, everybody. I hope I share with you an interesting story, and at the best, I hope you walk away with 3 nuggets. At the worst, at least 1. So yeah, I actually am in transition right now. I'm starting a new job in September, moving over to a more prestigious law firm that actually is not based in Pittsburgh, but I will be. So it's going to make for a very interesting and dynamic change. However, it's cool because my time has shifted. They are giving me a second shift, which means I have my mornings available to take care of all of the real estate investing and all of the businesses that I have been overseeing. And so hopefully it'll work out and it'll be really a good synchronous fit. So,
well, that's great. That's great that an employer will do that and understands that you do other things on the side, which is real estate investing. So that's fantastic. What did we miss, Rita, in the introduction that you want the users to hear?
Gosh. Well, I actually began my legal career while I was pursuing my master's in international affairs because I worked for a small law firm that did only real estate closings. They were tied to a bank, so they handled every single closing for every single mortgage that bank processed, as well as other things. They also did bankruptcy. So I learned all about the whole lending, borrowing, buying process at that time. I also learned about the recording, lien holding, title searching, bonding process at that time as well. So my principal job for them was doing bring downs, which is like a mini title search after a closing to check and make sure that the seller actually slipped in a lien that didn't get picked up in the title search, and it was for $20,000, and so it's before we disperse funds. And so we have to call the seller and say, hey, that lien it came through, and
Yeah.
we're going to have to hold back your funds until this gets resolved. I also had to do old aging titles where we had a closing where we escrowed funds, and then for whatever reason, the reason behind the escrow, whether it was a tax lien, water bill, something, either it got resolved and then we weren't able to get in touch with the seller or the buyer to return what the balance was, or the lien, they couldn't figure out what was going on with the lien, and so it got dropped because other things came in. So it was a really interesting job because I had to do investigative research to try and find where people went, because a lot of the times the escrow was for the buyer's funds and the buyer was moving out of town. And this is back in the late 1980s. So it was pre-internet, peoplefinder.com, pre-anything.com, in fact. So I really had to be creative with my resources on trying to find people at
Wow.
the infancy of the internet. So I think that probably got me interested in doing the research too, because that's really what I had been doing a whole lot of from the very get-go. So I practiced for 6 years. I did all kinds of jury work, and I did 3 jury trials, and I practiced all sorts of different areas of law. I was also an arbitrator with the Securities Arbitration Division, otherwise currently known as FINRA. Back then it was the NASD. And so I was doing arbitration for people who had invested their money with brokerage firms and the brokerage firm lost all their money. So I basically ran the gamut. I did every single area of law known to man and decided I really hated the practice. And a friend of mine told me that I should consider going and getting my library and information degree, because then I could become a law librarian. And that's what I did, and graduated in 99 and never looked back. And it's been one of the best careers ever. Anyone who wants to get into library and information or law librarianship is free to talk to me too. I think it's a really rewarding career. And in some degrees, it's the pinnacle of anti-consequentialism, because it doesn't matter what side of the V that you're on in the lawsuit or the litigation or the merger and acquisition. You're just being asked to look for facts or information, and facts are facts. Information is information.
Right.
If it's bad news, you have to, you tell the attorney, but it's not your responsibility to ultimately tell the client. That's up to the attorney. So you don't have to deal with that pressure. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. And you have to tell the attorney, not going to work,
Yeah.
and they're very gracious about it. They're not yelling at you. They have to face the facts that, sometimes the law just isn't on your side, and you have to be a little more creative.
Yeah. So I would think with all of your knowledge, that would have scared you away from real estate, not really been a motivator of real estate. So talk a little bit about how you got over that hurdle of thinking, oh my gosh, all of these things can happen. All of these people that are associated with a real estate transaction can do something and adversely affect me.
Well, that's true. And it's funny because I keep telling myself when I start into a new process, we can do hard things. We can do hard things. The fear is always there. It never goes away. So for those of you, if you're on your second, your third, your 20th, and you still have that knot in your stomach as you start into the process, it is okay, because that fear should always be there. If you aren't afraid a little bit about all the unknowns and the, thousands of different strings that are out there dangling in a deal, you're probably missing something or doing something wrong. I don't necessarily want to say you're doing something wrong, but you might be missing something, because every single time, I have done so many closings on the professional side that I have seen everything happen. I've done closings during divorces where we had to have conference rooms at opposite ends of the office so that the exes couldn't see each other, and then they inadvertently did, and a huge shouting match took place in the middle of an office where another closing unrelated to that was happening. I've had closings where the check wasn't there. Everybody was ready to go, but there was no check. So how do you resolve that? Or, you find out that there's a lien that shows up late in the deal, or something's wrong with the title and it doesn't get fixed in time. All of these things. And the one thing that all of these bad, horrible things, interruptive things that have happened, is what it's taught me is that the deal still goes through.
Yeah.
And it's not the end of the world.
Yep.
Everything is fixable. You just got to stop, reflect on it, and think about the best approach to take to resolve the problem, because that's what it is. It's just a problem. It's not the end of the world. No one has died, I hope, and it's solvable.
Yeah.
It may not be easy, but it's solvable. And
that's one of the things that I'm constantly facing, Rita. So still working on my mindset, as my husband would say. I said, can't any transaction run smoothly where we get up to closing? It's either, hey, the appraisal came in low and here are some other comps, and then, sorry, we're not going to change the appraisal, to, hey, here's an appraisal that we thought was fair, and the bank's saying, no, we don't want to lend that much. So, in my mind, I throw my hands up and I go, why is everything just complicated? And I think there's just this level of unknowns. And every transaction that we have, there's some kinks in the road. And I think we're on our 27th closing or something. So we've done a lot. And I think that's not even including the refinances. So probably double that. So I always feel like there's some kinks, but it's like, even at the last minute, we've pivoted and went with a different lender.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I think
that's one of the
don't be
things
scared.
we have to.
Don't be scared to pivot.
Yeah. I mean, keep your options open is always my rule. Like I would work with a partner in the real estate investing, and every once in a while she, we'll get a good deal from the broker, from a mortgage broker on one case. And then we go into a second one, and all of a sudden the second one, the deal is not as sweet as the first one was. And I'm like, don't be afraid to go ask somebody else. I mean, it's a process, yes, but if it gets us a better deal where we need to be, then that's what we should do.
Exactly. So Rita, let's pivot for a minute and let's talk about somebody that's getting into real estate should have an LLC. Let's talk about the importance of investing and creating this LLC, and
Okay.
why somebody never wants to put it in their own name, put the property in their own name.
Well, never put it in your own name because, I hesitate on this one. And I understand, trust me, I understand the process, but if I waffle on this a little bit, because I always think that if you deal with people honestly and you handle your real estate in a respectable way and you keep it up and you maintain it, and you are beyond code with the standards that you're holding yourself to, and you treat your tenants with respect, the chances of you getting sued are like 1%. So we're really LLCing ourselves against the 1%, because I'm pretty sure that you, me, and most of the audience, if not all of the audience, are doing all the right things, all the honorable things, all the lawful things when they're investing in real estate. They're taking the correct steps. Things happen, pipes burst. We're not psychics. We don't know when our house, 25 miles away is going to decide to S the bed and throw out the hot water heater and bust the pipe, or back up the house pipe, or, have a roof eaves collapse and give way because all of a sudden there's a termite infestation that we didn't know anything about because it was all the way up in the attic where no one has gone in the last 6 years. But these are things that a tenant should understand, and, and I know there's the normative. There's the norm. They should understand,
Yep.
and I know there's a lot of horrible tenants out there. There's a lot of horrible landlords out there. And so the LLC is your first step of protection, because what it does is you then have a shield where you don't own the property, the LLC does. And the LLC is a limited liability company, which has no assets other than that specific property. And so if you do get a bad tenant or a bad situation where you get sued and you have a judgment lodged against you, if it's lodged against the LLC, it doesn't affect your assets. You can go home at night to your spouse and say, hey, the house is safe.
Yeah.
We're not going to lose the house because the judgment was against the LLC.
Yep. So I have two questions on that. So one is, do you suggest having one LLC for every property?
Yes. I think that's the simplest. It depends, because if you're going to have a lot of properties, you may want to reconsider it at a later time, but I would certainly start out with one LLC per property. I don't want to get caught in the morass of trusts, but I will caution people who say, I don't want to use an LLC. I'm going to create a trust. It's going to be simple and streamlined, and it'll protect me, when it comes time for, estate management and estate planning purposes. So I don't have to worry about how my kids are going to get the property or anything like that. Yes, but there are problems with trusts. So, and LLCs have their issues too, but I think in comparing the trust to the LLC is a whole lot easier to manage. It's literally one piece of paper. It's actually a form on the State Department's website. And it's kind of funny because we're in flux now because of that whole beneficial owner requirement that we were all hit with at the beginning of the year, as a result of FinCEN insisting that even LLCs had to file a disclosure identifying who the beneficial owners of the LLC are. The generic story is that if you're going to create an LLC, make it a Delaware LLC, because Delaware doesn't require you to file anything about your members, and you only have to identify who the incorporator is, and you need a registered agent in Delaware. And there's tons of registered agents in Delaware. You have to pay them, but they are there and they will accept service on behalf of the LLC if I don't want to say inevitable, if the unfortunate happens where you get sued, where your LLC gets sued. Also, the other tip on this, and this I learned from Amy, when you are talking to a prospective tenant, you tell them that you are an employee of the LLC. You don't say you own the building or that your LLC owns the building. You say, it's owned by an LLC, I'm the employee. Because you don't want them to have the opportunity of saying, they just use this LLC as a shield, and it's really not anything but an LLC on paper, and it was all her or all him. And that was the only person I ever saw working on the property, was this person. And so the LLC really is just in name only, and give the court a reason to go around that LLC. The other thing is to paper up your LLC. And a lot of people don't understand this, and it gets very frustrating for them. If you have a DE LLC and all of your property is in Pennsylvania, but you haven't registered that LLC in Pennsylvania, you're operating illegally, and the state can shut you down. If they were to find, like, who owns this, and it's an LLC, well, it's a Delaware LLC. How is it they're owning property in Pennsylvania and they're not registered to do business? Because the other thing I've learned in the real estate business is everyone wants a piece of your business. And the government does too. They're probably first in line. So the government always wants to know what businesses own what property. They've always wanted to know this. And it's for tax purposes. I mean, it's not they're spying on you and want to know what you're hiding in there. It's for tax purposes. They want to know who owns this lovely luxury building that's bringing in $90,000 a month, so that they can tax it appropriately.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate cost of living that we have to pay taxes, because that's what makes sure that the water turns on, the toilets flush, the electricity comes on, and that we have a road that leads to our apartment buildings or our rental properties. So pay your taxes and register your LLC, regardless of the state that you put. I've also heard Wyoming is a great state because they only require the operating entity or the registered agent to be identified. The problem is when you register the LLC in Pennsylvania, it's just like incorporating all over again, except this time you're in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is going to ask you, who are the members of the LLC?
Yeah.
They put them on there, they list them, but I will tell you that the Pennsylvania Department of State's website searching for entities is not always intuitive. It's not easy to figure out the website to find you. And even so what? You're a member of an LLC. It's the LLC that owns the building, not you. And so as long as your LLC has books in order, shows a business account, has an operating agreement.
So I have another question for you. So this, I understand, and we of course have LLCs in this very complicated organizational structure. Let me put it that way.
And that's good.
It starts with an LLC, but on every time I buy a property, of course I'm buying it with my LLC, but they make me sign a personal guarantee. So, doesn't that lessen the LLC risk umbrella that exists in putting the property under the LLC?
Only for that bank, only for the bank. Because
Okay.
the bank, that personal guarantee allows the bank to come after you. It doesn't open the door for anyone else.
Okay. That makes sense. So for all of you out there where somebody says, the bank says, hey, do you want to sign a personal guarantee? That just means that you're going to pay the mortgage and just pay attention to that. So that was a question that I had on there. So Rita, tell us what kind of investing you are doing. Do you buy single family? Do you buy multifamily? How many units do you own?
Well, I also do a little lending. Right now I'm maxed out, but I have issued notes to help people purchase properties. I've done that like 3 or 4 times now. And right now my one borrower is having difficulty with the code inspector, so it's slowing things up. So I've actually extended an offer to her because I'm just a softie, and I've offered to restructure the note rather than go through a confession of judgment and deal with a foreclosure action. Because same thing too. It's like if I know that the property has issues, I don't want to own a property. And that's what you get in mortgage foreclosure. You get title to the property. And it may take you 5 years to sell it. And then you have a default, you have what you call it, a deficiency judgment, which may or may not be enforceable depending upon how long it took you to sell the property. And so it's just easier to continue to work with the borrower and, ultimately, hopefully get to a position where they're comfortable, able to pay you back and get back on their feet. Hopefully it'll continue to work that way. This is a seasoned borrower, so I imagine that things will work out. This is just a bump in the road. Like I said, everything is fixable.
So out of your total investment portfolio bucket, how much is related to lending?
About 50%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 50% is lending and 50% is in the ownership. I own 2 single family homes. Yeah. And I got into real estate investing. Talk about a learning lesson, because my first property, I got it cheap. It was, a lipstick on a pig flip kind of thing where, we could do a few cosmetic things and get it rolling out the door, rentable. We got occupancy so quickly, it made our heads spin because everyone was warning us that, getting occupancy in the borough is going to be really tough. And, you're going to have to make sure this, that, and the other thing. And, I'm like, this house, it was a 120-year-old house with a flat roof. So there were all sorts of things that I was holding my breath on this one. Talk about being afraid. And we got a tenant right away at the rent we were asking, and things were just clicking. Like, we got in cheap. We flipped, we did the repairs really cheap. We were in under budget, and I think we were only a month behind in getting it rentable, and we rented it almost immediately, like in the first week. So, we got lulled into this false sense of security of like, this is easy.
Right. Everything's going to be easy.
Right. And then 6 months afterwards, once we had seasoned tenancy, we refinanced and closed on that deal and took the cash out, and we're rocking and rolling. And 3 months later, the house caught fire. The house next to it caught fire, and the fire jumped. So good news was there was no suspicion on our part that our tenant or we had caused the fire. The fire clearly started next door, no doubt. But I have now learned the agony and the struggles of dealing with major insurance claims in the worst case scenario, because we had closed on this deal in the end of January, and the fire occurred at the end of March. So it was 2 months where this bank and this insurance company were into lending us, covering us for insurance and lending us this money. And then our asset catches fire. And it was a wood frame, it was a frame house, wood frame, aluminum siding. And because they had to smash in the window, the fire jumped over on the roof onto the second floor. So of course, the fire department pours all the water from the top, and the rafters run all the way down. So all the water cascaded down to the first floor, flooded out the first floor, the whole front of the house, soaked the basement. And I immediately said, we need to get someone out there to put boards up on the broken windows, because they had to break windows to get in to the fire, because they couldn't just tell the tenant while the house is on fire, can go in and open the window. They broke the window. They broke the window, which was a brand new window. And I think they might have axed a corner of the house to sort of let the air out and create a fire break. But anyhow, the house was pretty much destroyed. Like, it's the equivalent of having your car hit a brick wall. It was total. And so our insurance, I always do this. When I fill out an insurance policy, I want it for replacement value, because I don't want to be left holding the bag of $50,000 to $75,000 repair when it could have been covered by an insurance policy due to, a calamitous event. And
So do you do replacement value, Rita, or do you do amount of your loan?
I do replacement value, because the amount of the loan, that pays off the mortgage, but I'm still stuck with a dead house. What good would that do me? I now have to go get another mortgage on a house that's not livable. I can't prove anything to a bank to get the repairs done. So I did, and it was interesting because I didn't ask for any policy amounts. I didn't say it has to be this much. I said, I just want a policy that's on replacement value. And the broker was like, okay, no problem. And he wrote us the policy. We really never looked at the face of the policy. We grabbed the binder, shoved it at the bank, and they're like, cool, you've got insurance.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you never think about.
Yeah.
And then the fire occurred, and the first thing I did is pulled up that policy, and it was for $390,000. And so now the insurance company, who's only insured us for 2 months, is on the hook for $390,000. And they are now.
So you're gonna rebuild.
Yeah. And they're not happy. They are not happy. They've been fighting tooth and nail. So this is the other tip I will give you. If you are in this situation where you've had a calamitous loss and have to have a big claim against your insurance company, go get yourself what's known as a public adjuster. What they do is they will walk through the claim. They will negotiate with the insurance company. You shouldn't have to do anything. In our case, there's been a little bit of give and play just because there's
Your background.
Well, yeah, my last firm, one of the largest departments that we had as a practice area was insurance recovery. And that was the group that I was responsible to. So I knew a little bit about insurance recovery to be dangerous. And after we went through 3 claims adjusters with the insurance company, the first one didn't take photographs. The second one, I don't know what happened. They just fell off the face of the And the third one just started stonewalling us like crazy. And they started stonewalling the public adjuster as well. And the public adjuster was being very polite. They were being very sweet. And it was so cute because they were like, we don't want to make anyone happy. Could you just kindly give us a explanation as to what's going on? What's your process time looking like for issuing a check on the claim? Because you validated the claim, more than 30 days ago, and we haven't seen any disbursement. And I just like dogtailed on that. And I said, I'll tell you what. And I cited the Pennsylvania code section for bad faith claim for insurance. And I said, you are right now in violation. So short of anything other than the check is in the mail with a photocopy of that check, I am not accepting anything.
Yeah.
I put up with 3 different claims adjusters. All 3 showed varying degrees of incompetence, and our public adjuster has been stonewalled by you as well. So I am putting you on notice. You have 7 days to produce a check, or I'm filing a lawsuit. And that's the end of the story. I will file a complaint with the Insurance Commission in Pennsylvania, and you can explain to them why you haven't issued a check after you've certified our claim more than 40 days ago. On day 6, we got our check.
Sure. I was going to say, did you get the check?
Day 6, I was counting, and it was, yeah. And so, because we had contractors on site, they were doing demo. They had to demo the entire house because what had happened is the fire was in March. The rain came from spring, and it being closed up and not being aerated, mold grew. So they had to tear out all of the drywall because the drywall was completely involved with mold. And then they had to treat the paneling, the framing, because it had started growing white mold. And so it was a big mess. And it's going to cost a penny, but it's not going to cost my penny because I had insurance. And I had insurance that said you will pay replacement value on this property. And I said, and the other thing I told them is I never made a demand for coverage, on this policy. Your broker gave me this policy. I never once questioned it. I never asked for a raise in the limits or anything or the deductible. I just took it as is. So they were doubly on the hook. Like it's different if you had said, "Oh, give me a policy for $350,000." I won't be comfortable. If you do something like that and then you have a fire, it doesn't look good. It's not a good option.
Yeah.
But they couldn't argue against me. It wasn't the fire didn't start in the property. I hadn't asked for a specific policy, and they had approved the claim. They were stuck, so they had to write the check.
Yeah. Well, unfortunate situation, but because you did things the right way, had to use a little bit of force and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, don't be afraid to tell them. Don't be afraid to tell them that they're in violation of the law after a certain amount of time has gone by. And it serves you to learn a little bit about what that law is. I mean, the law is dry. The statutes are boring. They're written in a very convoluted manner, and it takes a little bit. It's not like reading a novel. You have to read it slowly and read each sentence in each statute to say, okay, what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? And then the worst is when it refers back to another section saying, unless, of course, it's this kind of situation as enumerated in subsection blah, and then you have to jump through the book to find it. But reading statutes is not a fun thing, but it's an important thing. And you need to at least know the basics. If you're going to be an investor, you need to know what your rights are as well as your responsibilities.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, Rita, thank you so much for sharing your horrific situation with us, but hopefully our viewers and listeners gain something for that, right? Make sure you're getting an LLC, understand what a personal guarantee is. And
also with the LLC, make sure you have your operating agreement. Your bank is going to ask for it. I can't tell you how many people I've met who said that they have an LLC and they just use private lenders, and the private lenders don't always ask for the operating agreement, and they should.
They should.
But yeah, they should. But a bank is going to ask for an operating agreement, and the operating agreement is basically the birth certificate. No, it's basically the DNA structure of your LLC. If you don't have that, your LLC doesn't exist. It's really
Right.
just a filing with the state. So you need to do that. Make sure you have registered in Pennsylvania if that's where your property is, if that's where you're investing. Have the operating agreement and make sure you file your annual report every single year. It's only $7, but that $7 academic event, if you don't do it, will get your LLC canceled.
Yes, yes, for sure. So Rita, if anyone wants to get in touch with you to talk about any of these topics we talked about today, how can they find you?
Hey, you can find me. My email is SIBEMAD, and you can do it at Yahoo or at Gmail. Whichever one is more comfortable for you, both will work.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rita, for sharing all that information with us. And we'll see you at the picnic tonight.
All right, Jackie, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.